As Paratos, we are proud to sponsor this event. I think it is important for the baking industry that all of the key opinion leaders, they get together in this room on a regular basis to talk about different topics, different aspects of the of bread. Talks about ingredients, talks about technology, talks about art, talk about history. And last year we had Stefan introducing the event to talk about the future of bread. Talking a little bit about what we do as work at Paratos to preserve, let's say, the nice community of sourdoughs. There were a lot of questions afterwards on what it's all about. So when talking with Peter, we thought it was a good idea to invite nobody less than our sourdough librarian, Karl de Smedt. So Karl, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. Well, I am very excited that I can be here to talk about the library, to talk about our vision on the future of bread. But I will start with an apology. I am from Belgium. I grew up in Brussels. My mother tongue is Flemish, and I never learned English in school. I got my English from the movies, and I liked to watch Die Hard. So Bruce Willis was my teacher. So it can happen that sometimes I use words that are not meant to say, but they just pop up in my head, and often I just say what pops up in my head, which sometimes is nice, sometimes it's a bit more tricky. So the future of bread lies in its past. But what is the past? What is the past of bread? For myself, the shortest way, when we came up actually with this sentence in 2003 when we invited a Danish futurist called Anna-Marie Dahl, and she came up by saying, well, the future of bread lies in its past. I still remember that one of her slides when she was showing her presentation was that in the future people will not need business cards anymore. And I was wondering, I said, but how are we going to do then? And the next slide she was putting on was, Google me. I'm sure that if I would Google any name here, that probably the majority of you, I will find back on the internet. If I look at the average age, probably a lot of you do not have stupid things anymore on their social media account. The young kids, I'm happy that Facebook did not exist when I was 20. But she was right, but then what is the past? So I asked my grandmother. That was for me the shortest way to the past. And I asked my grandmother, how was the bread when you were young? What do you think that my grandmother told me? Who has any idea? It's interactive, huh? You can answer.
It was terrible. It was during the war and during Depression. It was terrible.
Can you hold that for a second?
Daysum, or was it the
My grandmother had no idea what daysum was. She didn't know. Come on. Normally people say, oh, it was better, it was fresher, it was...
It was for horses.
It was for horses. Well, okay, you ruined the entire introduction. It was a pain to make every day. Yeah. Well, most of the time when I ask these questions, I get it was fresher, it was better, it was bigger, it was anything, but not. But actually, she told me what. Can you now repeat what you said, Stanley?
That it was terrible because this was during war. It was during the Depression.
She was born in between two world wars, and she said, "Mam, Menneke toch." That's how she called me. Menneke means little guy. She says, the bread we have today is much better than what we had when I was young. It's a bit what Nathan said yesterday. He said that the bread that we find today is much better than what we had. So it's a bit contradictory that we have to look back to the past. So I I have a small recap video of Eric. Where is Eric? Here. Of your presentation. So it takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I would like to take you back.
Over 10,000 years ago, when humans began to turn to agriculture for their livelihood, they experimented with toasted grains such as barley and wheat, and then ate them in the form of porridge. During the Bronze Age, dough was kneaded and compressed with the help of stones in order to increase the heating surface. The ancient civilization of Mesopotamia learned to master the art of fermentation, giving birth to both bread and beer. Humankind's oldest law document, the Hammurabi Code, attests to this. It refers to taverns where fermented beverages were served. It was in ancient Egypt that the first written accounts of sourdough have been found. To understand just how important it was, bread was often the currency of civil servants' salaries. The loaves of bread placed in tombs and excavated by archaeologists reveal that their doughs were quite watery, making them easier to knead by women before baking. Initially, breads were made without using sourdough, matzah. Then the Greeks imported sourdough bread making from Egypt. This method became very popular with the elite, who saw this bread as a delicacy. The dough, which was less watery, required more strength to knead it. As a result, slaves were brought in to work in the bakeries. Having conquered Greece, the Romans imported slaves who had knowledge of the sourdough processes. This bread was a big success. Rome witnessed the creation of the first guild of bakers, the Collegium Pastorum. The baker was now a free man, as revealed within the tomb of Eurysaces. According to Pliny the Elder, there were 329 bakeries in Rome under Emperor Augustus. After the fall of Rome, bread making suffered as the water mills were neglected. Indeed, it was only towards the year 1000 AD that Cistercian monasteries developed large-scale agriculture and wheat cultivation. Under feudalism, each village had its own windmill and baking oven, called the communal oven. Indeed, the population was restricted to using only this oven to cook their bread. It was during this period that a new guild of bakers appeared. They made their bread using sourdough. During the 19th century, circular grindstones made way for cylinders. This facilitated the crushing of the grain and increased the amount of flour extracted. At this point, with more mouths to feed, the paradigm of bread making shifts.
Bakers have had bad times in the past. This is, I don't know if some of you can read French, but this is from Augustin Parmentier. Augustin Parmentier was a French pharmacist who did a lot with potatoes because he was captured for many years in Prussia, in Germany. And the only thing they could eat was potatoes, and he felt that potato was a nice thing to survive on. But at the same time, he was very interested in what bakers were doing, and he wrote a book in 1787, Le Traité Parfait du Boulanger. And this is what he said, and he said, oh, I feel pity for the bakers because these kind of artists, he considered them artists, he said, those guys are slaves from their sourdough because they cannot sleep longer than 3 hours in a row because they have to feed it. Yeah? So that brings us to this, that people were looking for something that would make the bread baking business easier. And it started with Anton van Leeuwenhoek that you mentioned yesterday, Eric, with the invention of the first microscope. And then there was Parmentier, there was Malouin. Different people in France and Austria were looking for yeast. Yeah? And everything came together with the guy in the middle, Louis Pasteur, who wrote his PhD on the alcoholic fermentation, and he opened the way to the production of baker's yeast. Now, today, who likes to take a taxi? Can you raise your hand? Who likes to take a taxi? Who is using Uber? This is a disruptive thing now. Taxi drivers, they don't know what to do. In Belgium, there is strikes. Taxi guys from all over Europe, they come to Brussels to strike against Uber. It's disruptive. Airbnb, hotel managers go crazy for Airbnb. That's today. Well, we had disruptive things going on in bakery 150 years ago. Thanks to Louis Pasteur, it was a bless. Science was a bless, but at the same time a cure, because this commercial yeast that was captured out of the sourdough and raised to perform very well and be a gas-producing unit made that bakers suddenly could bake bread in 3 hours, in 5 hours, with a lot of control. So you have to realize that if this would happen today, if we would live in the same circumstances as 150 years ago, I think we would be very happy as bakers, that suddenly we have something that makes our life easier, that we do not have to wake up every 3 hours to refresh our sourdough. So that made that this bread baking process was disrupted, and it was a bless but a cure at the same time, because what is the most important ingredient when you make bread? Time. Time is the most important ingredient. Just take your time and everything will be okay. Today, the guys on the right, it's Mr. Watson and Mr. Crick. Those are the inventors, they discovered the DNA. And that helps us today to really look what's going on into sourdough. So that brings us to the Sourdough Library, a project that we started, well, that we inaugurated 5 years ago in 2013, but that is already a little bit longer in our heads and in our minds. And we host a collection today of 103 sourdoughs from 20 countries. It's a nice mashup from different continents, and it's an amazing thing, because every sourdough that we enter in the library is analyzed completely. So we work together with different universities, but mainly with Professor Marco Gobetti in Italy. And what he does is he grows the sourdough on little Petri dishes. It takes about 3 months to do a complete analysis. And after 3 months, they are capable of isolating each colony, each microorganism. And then through DNA sequences, we can really see what these microorganisms are. So, we have a little present for you after my presentation, and it's like these 3D. I don't know if it's 3D glasses. It's virtual reality glasses. Virtual reality glasses. So the instructions are in the package, and you just slide your phone in there, and then you can look around in the library as if you are there. So we have these goggles there, and you just pick up one and go up, and then you can look around in the library. But you can also So this is what it will look like. You just will not see the little red dots. The little red dots that you have to look, you have to take out your phone again out of the thing, or your tab, and do it on your tablet or on a PC. And then you can watch some movies that we made on our Quest. But there is also the catalog. So you can consult what is actually found in this sourdough. So feel free to have a look. It's open, it's there, it's available for everyone. Now, so in our library we have 103 sourdoughs, and we have, of course, as Puratos, we have a broad network of people that we know, or that we might know through our network, but there is a world out there that we do not know. The purpose of the library is to protect the biodiversity of sourdough. If tomorrow a bakery would stop with its activities, if there would be a fire, if someone would make a mistake and throw its sourdough away, which happens, then it might be lost for the future. What we try to do is collect these sourdoughs that contribute to the biodiversity of sourdough in order to store them, to document them, and be able to preserve them for the future. So to get out of our network, we created a website called The Quest for Sourdough. Now, I'm going to ask the same question as, I can't remember who did it. I think it was Nathan. Who has a sourdough? Can you raise your hand? All right. Who has 2? Who has 3? Who has 4? Who has 5? I have 103. Now, who has already registered his sourdough on the Quest for Sourdough? Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Shame on you, thank you very much. Shame on all of you. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe you didn't know. But we have this website. It's called The Quest for Sourdough. I show you a nice animation. It took me enough time to do it, to make it, so I better show it. This is a website that is free for everybody. Are we sending on Facebook? We are on Facebook Live? Also for you? This is available for everybody, and we just ask to register your sourdough, to fill in some information and become part of this crazy little community that is the online library. And so you see all these little dots. I will zoom out a little bit, but all these little dots, here we even have sourdough in Hawaii. I would never know. We have some in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, all over Europe. And that's people who just want to share their sourdough with us online. And so when a sourdough is put online, then at least we know it exists and it is a potential candidate for the library. So the way it looks, if you would, I don't know let's just go to Mabel, see what it is. It's from Billy Massey, from Portsmouth. It's a young starter, it's less than a year. But at least you see we have already 1,168 sourdoughs registered from 87 countries. In the library you only have 20 countries present. Here we have like 87 countries from 1,002 cities. And voila, I was reading a cookbook and wanted to give it a try. People mention why they do that. So it's there, and it's just a nice way to be part of the community. And to give you an example here with this starter is from a guy here, Will Grant from Seattle. And when he registered his sourdough, he contacted me. He said, I want my sourdough in the library. I want my sourdough in the library. So we started looking into it, and Yeah, it's a sourdough that originates from the Klondike Gold Rush. So it's a starter from 1917 or something like that. And then a little bit later, I discovered a sourdough from Whitehorse in Canada. And it's probably the oldest sourdough starter from Canada, from a lady called Ione Christensen. And she has the sourdough from her great-great-great-grandmother, dating back to 1897, also from the Klondike. So this Sunday, on Sunday, I fly to Seattle, and then to Skagway, and then to Whitehorse, and then I drive all the way up to Dawson City in order to make a new movie of our quest for sourdough, to illustrate, to document, but also to pick up these two sourdoughs in order to study them and to see what is their relation, is there any relation, and so on. Now, what we found in our sourdoughs is that we have 7 genus of yeast and 7 genus of lactic acid bacteria. And in total, it's around, it's a bit more than 900 different microorganisms that we have already isolated out of these 103 sourdoughs that we have actually in the library. I'm going to save you the pronunciation. But there is we find some crazy stuff. I had this baker who has a sourdough in the library from Switzerland, and he comes to the library to check out his sourdough and to receive the report with what we found inside and so on. And so I tell him, I said, look, we found Torula spora del bruchi. It's a yeast that is not very present in the library. He says, oh, that's weird. Is there any other sourdough in which you found Torula spora del bruchi? Torula spora del bruchi is also a yeast that is found in many, or that is used for the fermentation of top wines. The expensive wines often do contain this strain. Now, when he asked me the question, he says, do you have a sourdough, another one? I said, oh, yeah, I think so. So I look in the database and I find the one from Mexico. It's a wheat sourdough, the Mexican one. The sourdough from Switzerland is a rye sourdough. The one from Mexico exists for 35 years. The Swiss one is from 1886. It's a 6th generation baker. So I was like, I didn't know. He asked me, how come that you find it back in the Mexican one and in mine? I didn't know. I still don't know. But then I started thinking, and his bakery is located at 1,500-meter altitude. Now, the city of Guadalajara in Mexico is also 1,500 meters. Would that be the reason? Might be, but we don't know. But it's something that we can investigate, because through the quest for sourdough, we can make a call to people who live at 1,500-meter altitude. Maybe if people is watching and they live on, is anyone here living on 1,500-meter altitude? You have a sourdough? I do. You should have brought it, eh? It would be interesting to analyze yours to see if we found that same species of yeast back. And maybe if there's people watching, just contact me and let me know. And we might maybe set up something to do a study on that. Maybe yeast is linked to the terroir. And then I have another example. There's 2 sourdoughs from the UK. One is from a bakery, and the other one is from Vanessa Kimball from the sourdough school. And we've analyzed their sourdough, and they are both containing Lactobacillus kimchi and Lactobacillus acidifarinae, and in that combination. So when I saw the report from Vanessa coming in, I thought that the bakery, because Vanessa has a sourdough school, I thought that the bakery had followed a course from Vanessa and that they just took a piece of her sourdough because she's sharing it. But it wasn't the case. They said, no, we never did that. We started it up in our own bakery. Now, what we think is that Vanessa is a woman, and the person in the bakery who has developed the sourdough is also a woman. So it might be that women have other effect on sourdough. Because last year, in July, we did a DNA experiment, and Erin, where is Erin? Erin will come back on that, I think, in your presentation, just a little bit, because the results are not there yet. But we did an experiment where we've sent to 18 bakers a bag of flour, a recipe, a protocol, and they all had to make the same sourdough, and they had to bring it to Belgium 2 months later. And we've swapped the baker's hands. We've taken samples from the sourdough before and after the refresh. We've taken a sample from the flour, and all of that is being processed now at the University of North Carolina in the lab of Rob Dunn with Erin and Madden. And we will look into these findings. There is already some result. There is a blog on the website. There is a blog on the website that is available where there is a first findings of Rob Dunn. But these are all interesting things that through the library, we can check. And we know that when we go and get a sample from a bakery, we know that it's a picture from that moment. But at least we have the picture. And it's possible that within 5 years or 10 years, because many people say, oh, my sourdough dates back to that, and my sourdough dates back to that. You cannot prove that. There is no test that can say how old a sourdough really is. But at least having sourdoughs now officially stored in the library, documented, that gives us a fantastic opportunity to keep on doing this thing for the years to come. And within 5 or 10 years, go back to one of the bakeries and take again a sample and compare the starter collected the first time now or in 5 years with the one we still have in the library. So there's 3 samples that you can again compare to each other and see how and what has been changing. That's the nice thing about the library, that it's a place that is a subject for study. At least someone has to do it. So most of the sourdoughs are made with flour, wheat flour, durum wheat flour, rye flour, whole rye. Some sourdoughs, there is one, I don't remember the number, but there is one that is made with six types of flour. It's number 70. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Number 70, it's one from the US. It's a sourdough from the US. But there is one. We don't have that. We don't have that, Paul. No, you're a hooligan. The only one that is a bit exceptional is number 100. I went last year in April to Japan, city of Tokyo, and there is a bakery who gave their sourdough to the collection, and it's made from rice. It is a sourdough made by Mr. Kimura. He was one of the last samurai, dating back to 1873. It was not Tom Cruise. Yeah. It was this guy, Mr. Kimura. It was the change of the shoguns, so the feudal system to the imperial system. And the samurai, they needed to find a new job. And some of them became carpenters and blacksmiths and so on. And this guy decided to become a baker. And he learned from a Westerner. We don't know if it was an American, a Dutch guy, a Portuguese, they don't know. But he learned how to make sourdough. And instead of making steamed bread, like they were used to in Japan, he started to bake in an oven. And he was not satisfied with the flavor. And he knew from the sakadane fermentation, which is to make the sake, they use rice. And so he converted his sourdough with cooked rice. And today they still use that sourdough. It has a very nice flavor. The fermentation power is amazing. Yeah? So the the things that people use to inoculate their sourdoughs, well, are here. It's going from strawberry, some grapes. The Mexican one is refreshed with lime, with beer, with eggs. But you can see that in the movie. If you go to the Sourdough Library virtual, there is a movie about Mexico. Very nice bakery. Everything is done by hand. Very skilled bakers. But this baker is using lime, eggs, and beer. When I asked him, why are you using lime, eggs, and beer? He said, I don't know. That's how I learned. He didn't know. But there is some explanation in the movie. Now, the possibilities are infinite. Yeah? We hope that maybe in the future, today we have like 23, 21, 24 sourdoughs per year that we can send to the library to be analyzed. Yeah? But we hope in the future that we can send many more, and that, for instance, all the sourdoughs that we have on the Questful sourdough that are relevant, that we could just fly them in and store them for the future, analyze them. That's our dream, so that we really get even a better view on what's going on. Not now. The thing is that if we look at the future of bread, that we have to go beyond the 1854 when the disruption appeared in our business. And we have to realize that baking industry, when I say baking industry, for me it's everything. Everybody that makes a bread is the baking industry, unless there is another word. How do you say that in English? Baking world, the bakery world, the bakery trade. Let's agree on bakery trade. Thank you. That has been disrupted, but I do not believe that any other fermented good business has been disrupted like that. Cheese, wine, beer, sausages, chocolate, everything everything that is nice, that is good, has been fermented. Fermentation is a great invention. Even greater than fire, was once said by David Rain Wallace, an American writer. And so that knowledge of sourdough baking has been lost over the last 150 years. There is very little writings about how to make sourdough. We lost a huge part of that 5,000-year-old tradition, because until 150 years ago, everybody who wanted to make bread was using sourdough, but we lost that. The education, I've been to one of the better bakery schools in Belgium. We never learned how to make sourdough. It was not taught. They mentioned it once in a theoretical class about German rye bread, because there you need to acidify in order to make it bakeable and to make it sliceable, that it's not sticking to the knife and so on. You need some acidification, but that was it. I saw my first sourdough when I started to work for Peral's in 1994, and it was a sourdough that we collected from San Francisco in 1989. So the whole thing here is that it's not about making artisan bread. It's about making good bread. And I am convinced that everybody can make good bread. It's not because you do something on a large scale that it's per definition shitty bread. I have examples of the biggest bakeries in Europe that make excellent bread based on sourdough, based on long fermentation. When they switch on the line on Friday morning at 8 o'clock, the first breads come out of the oven Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Yeah. It's about the artisan, the industrial. It's more about time. It's more about making bread slow. We should rethink the way we use yeast. Yeast today, if you would compare that to a human, it would be Usain Bolt. Fastest man on earth. That's a commercial yeast. If I would be a wild yeast, yeah, I can be from the same strain. We are both humans. Yeah, we can be. There is Saccharomyces cerevisiae that is wild, yeah, not produced commercially. It's a wild yeast. If I would be the wild one and Usain Bolt would be the commercial one, he runs the 100 meter in, I don't know, what's the record? 9 seconds. I do it probably in 12 times 3. But both we will reach the finish. I would just need more time. Yeah? Time is the most important ingredient when we make bread. Yeah? So that's what we would like to see, that this world of bakery is again thinking about how to introduce more time into bread in order to make the bread become better than what it is today. But let's not forget that we have already good bread. I believe that bread is very, very good. Look, I was raised by bread. I have a great body. I forgot that this is gone online. You see, this is what I said. If things pop up in your head and you just don't pay attention, this is gonna follow me. So I would like you to join that tradition. Yeah? If we believe that the future of bread lies in its past, then we have to join that tradition and create the future for bread or any baked good, in fact. We saw yesterday, we saw yesterday from Jennifer. Jennifer, she made fantastic cookies, by the way. I love the cookies. So voila, I think the time is...
Take some questions?
Yeah, we have some time.
There's questions over there. I'll pass the mic. By the way, do you want to talk about that book at all?
Yes, yes. So, here. First me, it's me time. Still me time. Me time. You have me? Yeah. People in the room, people on the internet, there is this fantastic book that has been written where the sourdough library is mentioned. That's why we are so pleased that it's done. But this is a very nice book that will be soon. You can already order it on Amazon, on Amazon.com. It's available in German and in English. And it is a book it's not a recipe book. It's not a science book, but it's a book that talks about people. There is 10 people in this book. Vanessa Kimball, Barbara Elisi from Spiga Madre. There is Stefan. There is Pablo, who works a lot with Paul. And like that, there is 10 personalities of people who discovered sourdough or for whom sourdough plays a very important role in their life. It's very enjoyable. The nicest thing about this book is that the sourdough that is traveling from person to person becomes a personality itself. It gets baptized on the road, he becomes Vitus, and he even starts to talk to the writer. So it's a very entertaining book. So available on Amazon.com.
Was the bread that was served during the tasting made with Vitus yesterday?
Yesterday, the breads from the tasting was made with Vitus, yeah.
So when you tasted the sourdough breads during the cheese and wine tasting, made from the starter that is featured in this book that has been passed to various people.
Did you like the bread? Yes. Then buy the book.
There's a question over here.
How often do you feed the starters in your library, or are they on different schedules, and do you keep a dehydrated version?
No. We don't have a dehydrate. So we have the isolated microorganisms we keep in a freezer at -80 degrees. And from the samples itself in the fridge, they are kept at 4 degrees centigrade, which is Fahrenheit, 38 Fahrenheit. And we refresh them every 2 months. So from this trip, I go back on the 11th. I fly back to Belgium. And so on Monday, the 14th, we start with the refreshment. And so it takes us, We start on Monday morning and we end on Thursday evening. We refresh about 30, 34 sourdoughs a day, and we get 3 refreshments. Each sourdough is refreshed 3 times. We do the first refresh of the first series on Monday morning, the second refresh on Tuesday morning, the third refresh on Tuesday afternoon, and in between we start with the second series. So it's a lot of work. It's 3 people. There is Nadia, my assistant, who is scaling everything. There is Mariana, the cleaning lady, who is washing all the bowls in between and disinfecting them with alcohol. And I do the mixing and putting in the buckets and running around to the proofer and so on.
What do you do with the excess sourdough?
It's thrown away. But we do not have a lot of excess. For the refresh, we use the original flour. So besides having a collection of 103 sourdoughs, we also have a collection of more than 103 flours. So we ask every year the baker to send us a bag of flour so that we can continue feeding it with the same flour.
You just answered my question. What do you do with the discard?
Oh, we have a connection. We have a connection.
So while you're doing all the refreshing, how do you keep the sourdough from getting contaminated with the wild yeast and the microbes that exist within your library?
Yes. So first of all, we have to realize that we only do six refreshments per year. So we do it every 2 months, and every 2 months they get refreshed 3 times. But this is not enough. At least we hope. It's a protocol that we got from the professor of the university. So we do not refresh every day. I am convinced that if I would give a piece of my sourdough to any of you and you would start refreshing it every day in your bakery, even if I would give you the original flour, there might be some change. But the fact that we only do it 6 times a year is not enough to... You have to realize that these sourdoughs are mature. It's like a fortress. I often compare, people often ask me, what's the difference between a new starter and an old starter? It's imagine Columbus. When Columbus arrived in Santo Domingo, there was no city. Yeah, he had to build some wooden house in the beginning. Yeah, and there was probably a fence in wood. And over the years, cities like Carthago, cities like these on the sea or even inland, they have like a wall and a second wall, and there is a fortress, and this is a mature sourdough. So in order to invade that, you need a lot of time. Yeah? A siege of a city in the past was months or years. With the sourdough, it's the same. You will not, because you do one refresh in a hostile environment, you will not contaminate it directly, because what you bring in as wild yeasts are not cannot compete with what is present in the sourdough itself. It's like sending one guy with a baseball stick towards 1,500 people with knives, mitraillette, whatever. You will not be able to conquer.
You can't bring a knife to a gunfight, right?
Yeah, probably. I never tried. Wait.
That partially answered my question, but have you tested some of your first starters in the library to see if they've changed?
Yes, we did. So I mentioned that we have 24 sourdoughs that we send to the university every year, and from these 24, there is like 21 new ones and 3 samples that we take at random from the library to check them. And so far the results are, need to touch wood, so far the results are okay. What we do see is that sometimes there is a shift in dominance, that if there is 2 or 3 lactic acid bacteria present, that one is taking the upper hand from the beginning. So if it's a Lactobacillus sanfranciscensis with a plantarum, that there is a shift. Jennifer, wait for the mic,
I don't have a question. I just want to add to the narrative a little, just because the bread that I did was a Flemish naturally leavened bread. And
Lima? Is it from origin?
well, I was going to say the Lima thing because Tresca Lindsay, who is 80 plus years old and lives in my community, her brother was Omar Gavert, who started Lima Bakery. So her father, Pierre Gavert, met Osawa after World War II during the World Peace Movement, and Osawa, as a pacifist, saw the connection of food and inspired, the Lindsay's, well, he started the first macrobiotic. You know all of this, but it's such an interesting story because when you talk about disruptor and the future of bread in the past, that the concept of peace was connected there, and that I just think it's fascinating that our way back was through food, and we're still working on the peace piece, but you know, maybe there's.
Well, it's true. There is this Lima bakery. It was a bakery located in Ghent, in Belgium. Has been a source of inspiration for many people. Like the boss of Michel Soua from the San Francisco Baking Institute. The boss of Michel Soua learned to bake sourdough bread from that Lima bakery, and Chad Robertson learned it from so all good things start in Belgium. Chocolate, beer, sourdough.
I know, and the Bouvier, Flanders. Great job.
Very connected. We have time for one final question.
Okay, practical question. When you refresh, what are your ratios? What percentage hydration do you use? What percentage of starter do you add? And how long do you ferment, and at what ambient temperature before you store it at 4C?
Okay, so the ratio is we follow the ratio we got from the bakery. So all the recipes are different. Well, some of them are the same, but I'm going to give an example. There is one because it's the example I always use. So we have from the jar, the first refresh, we take 400 grams of starter, and we add 300 water, 300 flour. That is an example for one. We always try to reach more or less 1 kg. That is going for 6 hours in the proof box at 35 degrees. Yeah? Then we store them for 1 night in the fridge. Next day in the morning, we take them out. We take 400 grams of starter, 300 grams of water, 300 grams of flour. We mix, it goes 6 hours in the proof box at 35 degrees centigrade. And then the last refresh, we take 250 grams of starter with 375 of water, 375 of flour. We mix, and then I pour it back in the jar, in the glass jar. I close the jar, and I put it in the library, back in the fridge at 4 degrees. And over 2 months, the pH is going down, the acidity. And when it's a liquid sourdough, I just pour it in the glass, so I don't touch them. When it's a stiff sourdough, I have to like make a sausage, squeeze it in, but then I spray a little alcohol spray in the jar. I put the sourdough inside, and I spray again on top of the sourdough, and then I close. And the CO2 that is built up helps actually to preserve the sourdough.
Wow. Before we end, would you mind saying one more time if people want to register their sourdough, how do they do that?
I'll show you.
Okay.
It's very simple. So you go to the Quest for Sourdough. This is the landing page. And it's here. Add your sourdough, or it will appear here. Preserve yours. Come. Where is it? Voila. Start preserving. And so you click on it. And the very first thing you need to do is to give your sourdough a name. You have to name it. Women often give a male name to their sourdough, and men often give a female name. My sourdoughs are Barbara and Amanda. Don't ask me why.
That's for next symposium. We'll get into that.
But this, and then you log in, and then you start filling in the information.
Sounds like the future of sourdough the future of Karl lies in the past with his sourdoughs. First of all,
there is still.
Could I make one request? Could you send Peter or one of the organizers your system for refreshing sourdough? And then could you send it out to everybody so we have that formula and how you do it?
But that is what this is a system for refreshment to preserve sourdough. It's for 2 months preservation in the fridge and to maintain the microbiology alive and in good conditions. If you want your sourdough for baking, you need to feed it more often. If I want to bake, they bubble. They bubble after the third refresh, they bubble, they're alive. But if I would like to bake with them, I still would give 2 or 3 refreshments more in order to have them really like up and running. So it's not the good one. Read the book, buy the book, buy the book. It's in there. Or you find it on the website.
Thank
you
you
see
so
how
much,
many
Karl.
people do it, and you just go and sneak in other men's profile, and you will find a lot of.
So we will make as much of this information available as we can through our emails and all. Karl, from J.A. Henkel's, a thank you. You can now cut your breads with their knife. There's no wild yeast on it right now. So, but thank you for amazing. We're going to continue.
Thank you very much. You were fantastic.